My daughter told me never to visit her home. Said her husband believed her father had died in a construction accident. I wasn't dead. I just didn't fit the version of her life she was selling. But when her marriage started falling apart and she was desperate to win her in-laws' favor, she asked me to pose as her long-lost uncle to get sympathy. What happened next was rather unimaginable. Before we continue, tell me what you'd have done if you were in my shoes. I'd continue now, but take a second to support us by subscribing to this channel if you are new here and like this story if you enjoy stories like this. My name is Tomas Herrera, and I raised my daughter to be proud of where she came from. I worked with my hands. Steel and sweat were my currency. Welding paid the bills, put food on the table, and when my wife died too young, it gave me the backbone to keep moving. Sophia was 8 when we buried her mother. She cried so hard she threw up on the grass. I still remember holding her in my lap on the curb while the rest of the family trickled back into the house for food and awkward condolences. It's just us now, I told her, wiping her face with my sleeve. And we're going to make it. And we did, though not without sacrifice. I turned down jobs that would have sent me out of state, stayed up at night helping with math homework I barely understood, and paid for every school uniform and violin lesson without letting her see me skip dinner to cover the difference. So no, I didn't expect her to erase me one day like some embarrassing typo in a glossy magazine article. I never expected to be declared dead while I was still breathing. The first time I heard I died was from my friend Rigo, who used to work the same scrapyard as me before his knees gave out. He came over one Saturday with a six-pack and a look I couldn't read. "Tomas," he said slowly, "you been checking Facebook?" I told him I hadn't logged on in years. He handed me his phone, already loaded to a post from Sophia's husband's mother. It was one of those long, weepy tributes, written in that syrupy, white lady cursive that always seemed performative to me. Sophia's father died in a tragic construction accident when she was young, it read. Her strength despite such loss is a testament to the woman she is today. Underneath was a picture of Sophia standing between her husband and his parents, all dressed like they were auditioning for a magazine cover. Not a trace of me anywhere. I stared at that post for so long I forgot to blink. "I'm right here," I finally said, like saying it out loud would reverse the spell. Rigo just cracked open a beer and muttered, "You always knew she wanted more than this place." I sat on the porch after Rigo left, watching the sun sink over the rooftops of our working-class neighborhood. The screen door creaked every time the breeze passed through. It used to be Sophia's favorite sound. When she was little, she called it the singing door and made me promise never to fix it. Now it was just another relic of a life she'd outgrown. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. She stopped calling not long after she married Mark, her high-rise living, suit-wearing, money-scented husband. I remember their wedding like it was yesterday, how I showed up in my best dress shirt, ironed twice, only to be seated at a table far from the front. Her in-laws barely looked me in the eye. The photographer took exactly one photo with me, and I had to ask for it. She promised we'd catch up after the honeymoon. That never happened. No birthday calls. No holiday visits. Nothing but silence, as if staying in touch with me might taint her new life like oil on silk. I would have stayed gone, too. I would have let her have her lie, kept my distance, died a ghost's death in her version of the story, until she called. I almost didn't pick up. The number was unfamiliar, and I've learned the hard way that unexpected calls usually mean bad news, or worse, people asking for money. But something told me to answer. Her voice hit me like a freight train. Tentative. Tired. Still hers, but different. "Hi, Poppy," she said. And just like that, I was back in the goddamn trenches of emotion I thought I'd welded shut years ago. "Sophia?" I asked, already bracing for whatever came next. "I know it's been a long time," she said. I need to see you." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just sat there, holding the silence between us like it might tell me what she really wanted. "It's important," she added. "Please." So I told her to meet me at Manny's Diner the next day. Neutral ground. Public enough that she wouldn't try to twist anything into a performance. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my old thermos of coffee, staring at the peeling linoleum and wondering what kind of person you had to be to fake your own father's death and then call him like it was nothing. I cycled through every possible scenario. Was she sick? Pregnant? Did she need money? Maybe the house of cards she built was finally shaking, and I was the only one who knew where the foundation really was. I wanted to hate her. I told myself I did. But a part of me, some stubborn, rusted-out bolt in the machinery of my heart, still missed her laugh, still remembered the way she used to put her small hand in mine when we crossed the street. I didn't want to be the man she buried to build her castle, but I also didn't want to be the father who turned his back when she finally knocked on the door. The next morning, I shaved. That might not seem like much, but I hadn't bothered in weeks. I put on the same dress shirt I wore to her wedding, starched and pressed, though it hung a little looser on me now. Time has a way of carving you down. At the diner, I chose the booth by the window and ordered black coffee. She walked in 20 minutes late, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Her heels clicked too loud against the tile. I barely recognized her. She'd gone thin, too thin, and her hair was pulled into one of those tight knots that made her look brittle, like one hard word could snap her in half. "Poppy," she said, taking off the glasses. Her eyes were rimmed red. I said nothing. I just stared. Let her fill the silence. Let her feel what it was like to be invisible. "I'm sorry," she finally whispered. "I made mistakes." I nodded slowly, not because I forgave her, but because I wanted her to keep talking. "Mark's family," she paused. "They think I'm from somewhere else. Someone else." She looked down. "They don't know about you." "And what do they think happened to me?" I asked, voice low and steady. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. "So, I'm still dead then." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Why am I here, Sophia?" I pressed. Her hands twisted in her lap. "They're conservative and judgmental. And things with Mark, they're not good. But his parents, they're very influential. If I could just get them on my side, maybe," she trailed off. "Maybe what?" I snapped. "Maybe they'll ignore the cracks in your perfect marriage if you feed them a sob story." She flinched. "I want you to come to dinner," she said quickly. "Ask my uncle, my mom's brother. They believe that. Just once, to help me. Please." I sat back, stunned. After all these years, after grieving a living daughter, after reading my own death online, she didn't want me back. She wanted a prop, a pawn, a lie dressed up in my face and voice. I stared at her long and hard, trying to find the girl who used to sing with me while we washed dishes, who used to bring me wildflowers from the park. She was gone. And in her place sat a woman so desperate to keep her house of cards from crumbling that she would resurrect a ghost just to bury him again under a different name. "I'll think about it," I said, standing. She looked up with hope flickering in her eyes. "But be careful what you wish for," I added, voice like steel. Because the truth has a way of showing up uninvited. And I meant every word. I didn't hear from her for 4 days after that. Not a text, not a voicemail. Not even a sign she'd walked away for good. I wasn't surprised. Sophia had always been that way, waiting for the world to smooth out around her before stepping back and like nothing happened. I spent those days swinging between fury and ache. I'd wake up thinking about her as a baby, the way she used to curl up against my chest with her tiny fists tucked under her chin, and then I'd remember the diner conversation. The gall it took to ask your father to become someone else, to help uphold the very lie that erased him. The memory would twist in my gut like rusted wire. I didn't know whether I wanted her to call again or not. Part of me thought if she didn't, I could finally close the book. But the other part, God help me, still hoped. Because even after everything, she was still my girl. And hope, when it comes to your child, is a stubborn damn weed. It grows through concrete. When she finally did call, I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi," she said, voice tighter than before. "Is this a bad time?" I nearly laughed. "What would make it a good time, Sophia?" I asked, setting down my coffee. She sighed. "I wasn't sure if you were still thinking about it." I could tell she was trying to stay composed, like she was holding a full glass of water on a tray in a moving car. "I have a dinner planned. Saturday. Just the immediate family. It's important. I need this to go right." Her voice broke just slightly on that last word, like she knew how fragile her web was. I asked her straight, "Do they know anything about me at all?" She hesitated. "No," she said quietly. "As far as they know, I was raised by my aunt after my dad died. They think my mother died a few years later." It was easier that way. I rubbed my hand over my face. "Easier for who, Sophia?" For you? For the people who wouldn't accept you if they saw where you came from. She didn't answer. I heard her breathing, shallow and careful. You built a whole life on a funeral I never had, I said. And now you want me to play a new part in your lie. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. Mark's leaving me, Poppy. His parents think I'm beneath him already. I thought if they saw I had family, real family, who cared about me, maybe they'd soften. Maybe they'd convince him to stay. Or at least, not fight so hard against me. It struck me then that this wasn't about love. This wasn't a woman trying to save a marriage. This was someone trying to keep the illusion of a life she'd worked so hard to fabricate. And I wasn't sure what was worse, that she thought I'd help her do it, or that a part of me still wanted to. You always had a gift for making things look like something they're not, I told her. But I'm not an accessory to your reinvention. If I come as who I am. No masks. No lies. She went quiet again. They won't understand, she finally said. Then let them not understand, I said flatly. But I won't disappear for you again. She sent me the address that evening. It was a townhouse in the Upper West Side, one of those tall, narrow buildings with a doorman and flowers that got changed out with the seasons. I stared at the text for a long time, unsure what I was really agreeing to. I wasn't looking to blow up her life. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't going to participate in a funeral procession I never asked for either. If she wanted me there, I'd be there. But not as a ghost. Not as an uncle conjured up for pity. I was going to walk in as Tomas Herrera, the man who gave up half his life to raise a daughter who decided he wasn't good enough to keep. If her in-laws were going to see the truth, they were going to see it all. No filters. No shame. I spent the next few days preparing, not just clothes, but my mindset. I needed to walk into that house with my spine straight and my soul intact. It would have been easier to stay home, to let her keep spinning her story until it unraveled on its own. But easy wasn't what raised her. Easy wasn't what kept food on the table when the lights got cut off. Easy didn't work double shifts so she could have piano lessons or pay her class trip deposit in full. I did that. And if standing in her curated world with calloused hands and a tired heart was what it took to remind her who she came from, then so be it. I pulled out a charcoal gray jacket I hadn't worn in years. Still fit, mostly. I cleaned my shoes, trimmed my beard, and looked in the mirror. The man looking back wasn't perfect, but he was real, and he wasn't going to hide. When Saturday came, I took the train in, sitting stiffly in the corner seat like a man headed to his own trial. I watched the skyline appear through the window, glass and steel stretching toward the sky like ambition in physical form. That city had taken my daughter from me, one sharp edge at a time. I stepped onto the platform with a knot in my gut and made my way to the townhouse. The doorman looked at me like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't, in his world, but he buzzed me up without a word. The hallway smelled like citrus cleaner and money. Sophia opened the door herself. She looked different this time. More polished, more nervous. You came, she said. I nodded. I said I would. Inside, everything looked like a page from a home magazine. Cream-colored furniture, expensive art, candles that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. She led me into the dining room where a long table was already set. Her in-laws were there, Mark's parents, along with a few others I didn't recognize. Mark himself stood near the window, jaw clenched. The moment he saw me, his expression shifted, confusion, then irritation. This is my uncle, Sophia said quickly, gesturing to me. My mother's brother. He just came back into my life recently. I extended a hand to Mark's father, a wiry man with a sharp suit and sharper eyes. Tomas, I said, but not her uncle. Her father. The room went dead silent. Sophia's face drained of all color. Mark blinked. His mother's eyes widened. Excuse me, she said, setting down her wine glass. I thought you said your father passed away years ago. I turned to Sophia. You want to tell them? Or should I? She stammered. Poppy, please. I held up a hand. No. Enough pretending. I came here because you asked me to, but I won't lie about who I am. Not again. Not for your image. Not for anyone. The tension in the room was thick enough to chew. Mark stepped forward. What the hell is going on? He snapped. Sophia tried to speak, but I beat her to it. What's going on? I said calmly. Is that your wife decided her real life wasn't good enough for the fantasy she sold you. So she killed off her past. including me. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one who felt ashamed. The silence that followed my words wasn't just awkward. It was oppressive, the kind of silence that makes people fidget with napkins, glance at their wine glasses, and silently calculate how fast they can leave without looking rude. Sophia stood frozen beside her chair, lips parted, eyes glassy, like she couldn't quite believe I'd said it out loud. Maybe she thought I wouldn't go through with it. Maybe she thought I'd play along, slip quietly into the role she scripted for me. But I wasn't interested in being anyone's ghost anymore. I had buried myself once for her. I wasn't about to do it again for the comfort of people who thought linen tablecloths and legacy surnames made them better than the rest of us. So I let the silence hang for a moment longer, just long enough for the shame to sink in where it belonged. Not on me, but on her. Mark's mother was the first to speak, and her tone carried that practiced poise I'd come to expect from wealthy people who'd never had to dig themselves out of anything. "Sophia," she said slowly, folding her hands on the table like she was about to offer legal counsel. "I believe you told us your father passed away. In an accident." The way she said accident made it sound like a euphemism, like death was less a tragedy and more an unfortunate inconvenience. Sophia didn't answer right away. Her eyes darted between me and Mark, and I could see it. Panic, pure and unfiltered, rising in her throat like bile. "I thought it would be easier," she finally whispered. "They wouldn't understand, Mark. Your parents wouldn't have accepted me if they knew the truth." "And what exactly is the truth?" Mark demanded, stepping forward with the tight, angry posture of a man who suddenly realizes his life may have been a stage set by someone else. "That your father's been alive this whole time? That you made up a backstory to make yourself more palatable?" His voice cracked on that last word, and he turned to me, eyes blazing. "Did you know she lied like this? All these years?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said calmly. "But I knew she was ashamed of me. That much she made clear a long time ago." I looked directly at Sophia. "And now the truth has finally caught up to you." The conversation erupted into a chaotic mix of questions, accusations, and gasps. One of the guests, someone I assumed was Mark's cousin, reached for his phone, not discreetly either. Whether he was recording, texting someone, or Googling my name, I didn't care. Sophia, red-faced and trembling, reached for his hand and hissed something under her breath. I took a seat, uninvited, and reached for the glass of water at my place setting. My hands were steady, my heart surprisingly calm. It wasn't spite that brought me here, it was clarity. I was done being invisible. I'd already spent too many years mourning a daughter who wasn't dead, but had still managed to bury me. I wasn't going to mourn anymore. I was going to be seen, even if it burned everything down in the process. Mark's father finally broke his silence, clearing his throat in that way old men do when they're trying to assert control. "Well," he said, eyes narrowing behind gold-rimmed glasses, "this is certainly an unexpected development. But I think we deserve an explanation. From both of you." He looked at Sophia with something between disappointment and suspicion. She sat down slowly, shoulders sagging, mascara already beginning to run. "I grew up in a small town," she began, her voice shaky. "My mom died when I was young. My dad, Poppy, raised me by himself. He worked in construction and welding. We didn't have much. It was hard. And when I met Mark, I wanted something different. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be enough for his world. So I lied. I said my father died. And when we got married, I didn't invite him because I didn't know how to explain it. I just kept the story going." The room didn't soften. No one rushed to comfort her. In fact, the more she spoke, the more people leaned away, as if her shame might be contagious. Mark ran a hand down his face. "You made me look like a fool," he muttered. "I've defended you to everyone. Every time they questioned your background, I told them it didn't matter. And you let me believe you were an orphan?" His voice cracked. "Do you know how many times I told people that story?" Sophia reached for him, but he pulled back. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "I just wanted a chance. A clean slate." I finally set my glass down, the sound sharp against the table. "You don't get to rewrite people, Mija," I said. "You don't get to kill off the ones who raised you just because they don't fit the image you want to sell." Mark stood up and walked out without another word. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, and a moment later, the front door slammed. Sophia didn't follow. She sat there, shoulders trembling, staring down at her untouched plate like it might offer salvation. One of the guests cleared their throat and excused themselves. Another followed. Within minutes, the table was half empty, the air thick with judgment and something worse, pity. Sophia finally turned to me. "You came here to ruin me," she said, voice low and bitter. "No," I said. "I came here because you asked me to. I just didn't come to lie." She laughed once, a hollow sound. "You really think this helps anything?" she snapped. "You think this makes you the good guy?" I stood. "I don't care about being the good guy. I care about not disappearing. You wanted me dead because it was easier than explaining who I was. Well, now they know. And whether they like it or not, I'm still here." I left the townhouse without another word, the air outside colder than I remembered. The city lights blurred slightly as I walked, not from weather, but from the tears I wouldn't let fall. I didn't cry, not for her, not for the wreckage behind me. I walked because I needed to feel the ground under my feet, to remind myself I was real, that I had a right to take up space in a world my daughter tried to cut me out of. Let her reckon with the fallout. Let her sit in the mess she made. For once, I was not the one left behind. Chapter 4: The Collapse. I expected her to call that night. Hell, I half expected her to show up at my doorstep the way she used to when she scraped her knees as a kid. But the hours passed, and nothing came. No calls. No messages. No half-hearted explanations. Just silence, thick and telling, like the kind that settles over a battlefield after everyone's dropped their weapons and started counting the bodies. I sat on my porch again, the same place I'd sat the day I found out I was dead. I sipped stale coffee and watched the neighbor's cat slink across the sidewalk, and I thought about how quickly a person could go from flesh and blood to fiction in someone else's life. Sophia had erased me once. This time, I had erased the story she built. And whether she hated me for it or not, I didn't regret it. Not for a second. But the fallout didn't take long to ripple out. On Monday morning, Rigo showed up again, knocking on my door with that same rattled look he wore the first time. He didn't even say hello, just held up his phone. "You're on TikTok," he said. "I'm what?" I squinted at the screen. There it was, blurry footage of the dinner party, recorded by someone who'd been there. The audio wasn't perfect, but you could hear enough. My voice introducing myself as Sophia's father, the confusion, Mark's raised voice, the awkward silence afterward. Overlaid with captions in big white letters. Her dad showed up alive after she said he died. This family dinner was wild. The comments section was a firestorm. Some people defended me. Others dragged her. But most just watched, fascinated by the spectacle of a woman's lies collapsing around her like wet cardboard. I wanted to laugh, but it wasn't funny. It was tragic. Not because she got caught. No, that part was necessary. But because she'd built her entire existence on pretending I didn't matter. And now, the world was watching it unravel. I spent that day fielding texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. My cousin Gloria sent a link to a reaction video someone had posted. A woman crying, saying she was estranged from her dad too, and this made her want to call him. Another message came from a number I didn't recognize, someone who said they grew up with Sophia and always wondered why she pretended not to know anyone from the old neighborhood. The attention made me uncomfortable. I wasn't used to being seen, especially not like this. But what struck me most was the way strangers understood something my own daughter had refused to see. I had been there. Through every scraped knee, every missed meal so she could have what she needed, every late-night school project. I had shown up. And still, she'd buried me alive in a story that made her look better. That evening, I finally got the call. Not from Sophia, but from Mark. His voice was clipped, professional, like he'd rehearsed every word. "Mr. Herrera," he said, "I wanted to talk to you man to man." I didn't say anything at first. Just waited. "I've moved out," he continued. "I can't trust her. This wasn't just a personal lie. It was something she built our marriage on. I'm sorry you had to be part of that. And I'm sorry we never got a chance to meet the right way." There was a beat of silence, and then he said something I didn't expect. "You seem like a good man. She should have been proud of you." I sat down slowly at my kitchen table, hand gripping the edge to steady myself. "That's kind of you to say," I murmured. "But I don't need your apology. Just take care of yourself." He paused. "Are you going to forgive her?" I sighed. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I won't disappear for her again. The next day, Sophia did finally reach out, through email. It was a long message, the kind that's too careful, too edited, like she wrote it and deleted it 10 times before hitting send. She said she was humiliated, that she hadn't left her apartment in 2 days. She talked about shame, about being raised in scarcity, about how being around Mark's family made her feel like she was constantly walking a tightrope over judgment. I didn't lie because I hated you, she wrote. I lied because I hated how small I felt when I compared myself to the people around me. And I didn't know how to carry you into that world without them seeing every mistake we made, every cheap jacket and broken heater. I didn't want to see the look in their eyes when I said, "This is my father." I wanted to protect you from that. I see now that it wasn't protection. It was cowardice. I read that email 3 times, slowly. Not because I needed to, but because I didn't trust my own heart to react correctly. There was a part of me that softened at her words, that recognized the daughter I raised in that email. But there was another part, the bigger part, that stiffened. Because no matter how carefully she tried to explain it, the fact remained. She had chosen their comfort over my dignity. She had robbed me of the most sacred relationship a parent can have. And while I understood her shame, I couldn't carry it for her anymore. I wrote back one sentence. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. After that, things quieted. The video stopped circulating, replaced by newer scandals and fresher betrayals. But in our corner of the world, the damage had been done. Word got around. Sophia didn't return to work for a while. I heard from Maribel, Sophia's cousin, the one who used to come over every summer to spend weekends in our cramped little apartment with its cracked tile and too small fan. She called to check on me, but also to say something I hadn't expected. She's not as strong as she pretends to be, Maribel said. She always felt like the odd one out, even when we were kids. You gave her everything, but she never believed it was enough. That's not your fault, Tio. That's hers. I thanked her, though I wasn't sure what for. Maybe just for remembering who I was, for acknowledging that I was. That night, I sat on the porch again. Same old coffee, same old creaky chair, and looked up at the stars, which were faint and few in the city sky, but still visible if you squinted long enough. I thought about what forgiveness meant and whether I owed it to her. I thought about the years I spent building a life she tried so hard to distance herself from. And I thought about how sometimes love doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes, it means letting someone learn from their own wreckage without offering them a ladder. I didn't want to hurt her. I never did. But maybe hurting wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Maybe silence, indifference, invisibility, maybe those were worse. At least now, she saw me. And maybe, for the first time in her curated, manicured, image-conscious life, she had to answer for it. 2 weeks passed before I saw her again. Not in person, not even through a message, but in a video that showed up in my feed without warning. Someone had tagged it redemption or reputation, and the thumbnail showed Sophia standing behind a podium in some kind of formal setting. I didn't recognize the venue, but I recognized the look in her eyes. She wasn't crying. She wasn't apologizing. She was controlling the narrative again, like she always did when the spotlight swung her way. I grew up without privilege, she began, her voice polished, deliberate. And like many who rise into unfamiliar spaces, I made choices driven by fear. I erased parts of myself to belong. She paused, then added, and I regret hurting the people who shaped me. The crowd murmured their approval. I didn't finish the video. I closed it after that line. Not because I was angry, it was worse than that. I was numb. Because even now, with all the pieces scattered and her carefully curated mask slipping at the edges, she was still trying to control the damage rather than truly confront it. I could have called her. I could have reached out and said, "That's not good enough." I could have demanded an apology that didn't come in front of a microphone, where sympathy and self-preservation sat hand in hand. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself calling Maribel. She picked up on the second ring and didn't bother with small talk. "You saw the video, huh?" she asked, already knowing. I nodded, forgetting she couldn't see me. "Yeah," I said. "She's good at playing both sides." Maribel sighed. "She is," she agreed. "But that doesn't mean she's not hurting. Doesn't mean she's not lost." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the framed photo of Sophia on my bookshelf. She must have been 9 in it. Hair in 2 braids, smile crooked with baby teeth still coming in. Being lost doesn't excuse treating people like disposable tools, I said. I get why she felt ashamed. But what she did, that wasn't survival. That was cruelty. Maribel didn't argue. Instead, she asked, "So what now? Are you going to let her back in?" It was a fair question, and I wish I had a clean answer. But the truth was, I didn't know. Part of me still missed her, not the woman she became, but the girl I raised. The one who used to hum songs while sweeping the kitchen and begged me to let her stir the pot, even when the rice burned. I missed her like you miss something in a dream after you wake up. Not sure if it was ever really yours, but aching all the same. But I also knew that nostalgia was dangerous. It made you rewrite the past in softer ink, blur out the betrayals, paint over the bruises. And I wasn't willing to let myself get painted out of her story again. If she wants to come back, I told Maribel, she's going to have to do it without an audience. Just her. Just me. No speeches. No pity plays. Maribel was quiet for a moment, then said, "That's fair. And maybe that's what she needs." The thing about family is that it doesn't end with betrayal, but it doesn't erase it either. You carry it, like a scar, like a limp, like a piece of glass you learn not to step on again. That week, I tried to go back to normal, but everything felt a little bit off. Even the guys at the scrapyard looked at me differently, like I had stepped into some mythical role now that the internet had decided I was a symbol of fatherhood. One of the younger workers, Diego, came up to me during lunch and said, "Hey, I saw that video. You're a legend, man." I shook my head. I'm a man who showed up for his kid. That used to be the baseline. He grinned, like I told a joke. But I wasn't joking. Showing up shouldn't make you exceptional. It should make you present. And if I was a legend for that, then we'd set the bar far too low. Toward the end of that week, something strange happened. I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual, handwritten letter on heavy cream-colored paper with no return address. I almost tossed it out thinking it was junk. But when I opened it, I saw her handwriting. Sophia. Careful, rounded letters. The kind she used when she was nervous or trying too hard. The letter wasn't long, but it stopped me cold. She wrote, "I don't know how to fix this. I just know I don't want to pretend anymore. If you're willing to see me, not the version of me I tried to be, but who I really am now, I'd like to come over. No one else. Just us." I read that line at least 5 times. I didn't know if it was enough. I didn't know if it was real. But for the first time, it felt like a step instead of a performance. I didn't respond right away. I left the letter on the kitchen table, weighted down by a coffee mug, and went for a long walk through the neighborhood. It was early evening, and kids were riding bikes down cracked sidewalks while their parents yelled at them from porches. Music played faintly from somewhere nearby. Bad speakers, good intentions. It was all so familiar, so rooted, and for the first time, I felt grateful for it. Sophia had tried to rise above all this, to escape it like it was something to survive. But me? I had survived for it. For her. And maybe, just maybe, that distinction was something she was finally beginning to understand. I got home and stared at the letter again. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't email. I just wrote back. One sentence. "Come Sunday. Bring nothing but yourself." And then I waited. She showed up just after noon, wearing jeans and an old gray sweater that looked nothing like the high-polished version of her I'd seen at that dinner party. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders in soft waves, and her face was bare, no makeup, no armor. She looked younger like that, or maybe just more tired. Either way, she looked real. I watched her from the porch as she hesitated by the gate, one hand clutching the strap of her purse like it was the only thing tethering her to this visit. I didn't move to greet her. I waited, still and quiet, because if she was coming back into my life, it had to be on her own 2 feet, not carried in by guilt or performance. She finally pushed the gate open and made her way up the steps with a breath that looked like it cost her something to take. "Hi, Poppy," she said, voice small but steady. I nodded and opened the screen door. "Come in," I replied, already walking toward the kitchen. I didn't hug her. I didn't ask how she was. I didn't offer her anything until she crossed that threshold and closed the door behind her. Only then did I pour 2 cups of coffee, black, no sugar. Just like we used to drink it on cold mornings when she was still living under my roof and figuring out who she was. She took the cup without a word and sat down across from me. For a long moment, we just sipped. No apologies. No questions. Just the sound of the old wall clock ticking louder than it should have. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked at the edges. I don't know how to start. I looked at her. You already did. You came here. She nodded slowly, eyes glancing around the kitchen like it was a museum of a life she abandoned. It hasn't changed much, she murmured. It has, I said. You just don't remember what it looked like anymore. She flinched like I'd struck her, but I didn't take it back. She needed to feel it, the weight of what she'd walked away from. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, looked the part, said the right things, that maybe no one would ask about where I came from, she said. I didn't want them to see our life and think it was a weakness. I set my cup down. You mean you didn't want them to think you were weak? She met my eyes, and for once, she didn't look away. Yes, she said. I was scared they'd think I was broken. Poor. Not good enough. So I created a version of me they'd accept. She laughed bitterly. And in the process, I became someone I didn't even recognize. I sat back in my chair. You could have told me. You could have said, Poppy, I don't know how to be both your daughter and their wife. But instead, you made that decision for both of us. You buried me. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. Truly. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. I didn't come here to be forgiven. I came here to own it. All of it. I didn't say anything for a long time. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to grab her hand across the table and tell her it was okay. That love was stronger than shame. But that wouldn't be the truth. Because forgiveness wasn't a pass. It wasn't a magic trick that rewound the clock and made everything she did vanish. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would be slow, earned, and without guarantee. I raised you to stand tall, I said finally. Not to pass. Not to hide. She wiped her nose with a napkin, nodded. I know. I forgot that. Or maybe I never believed I deserved to stand tall in the first place. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. I'd waited so long to hear her say something real, something without spin. And now that she had, I felt the years between us folding in like time was finally catching up. We talked for nearly an hour, about the lie, the fallout, the silence that stretched like a canyon between us. She told me about therapy, about Mark moving out for good, about the job she'd lost because of the social media exposure. She didn't ask me to feel sorry for her, and that mattered. She wasn't performing anymore. She wasn't angling for pity or redemption. She was just sitting in the mess, finally willing to call it hers. So what now? She asked as I stood to refill my coffee. I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window at the patch of grass that used to hold her kiddie pool, the one she splashed in for hours while I grilled hot dogs on a rusty hibachi. So much had changed. But some things, some truths, stayed planted deep. What now? I said slowly. Is boundaries. She nodded, like she'd already expected that. I'll come to you, I continued. Not often, not on demand. But if you want to talk, really talk, you know where to find me. But I'm not going to chase you. I'm not going to fight for space in a life I wasn't invited into. She took a deep breath. I understand. I stepped back toward the table. You're my daughter. That hasn't changed. But from here on out, the burden of repair is yours to carry. Her shoulders slumped, but she didn't resist. She just whispered, okay. I watched her stand, fold her napkin, and walk to the door. She paused with her hand on the knob. Thank you for seeing me today, she said. I nodded. You're welcome. Then I opened the door for her, watched her step out into the fading afternoon light, and let the screen swing shut behind her. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was clarity, clean and cutting. I had given her what she needed, not what she wanted. A door, not a doormat. A presence, not a performance. She could decide what to do with that. And if she walked away again, I would survive it. Because this time, I knew the truth. Being buried alive once taught me how to breathe in the dark. And I'd never stop breathing for someone else's comfort again. When someone buries you to build their own image, do you ever let them back in? Or do you draw a line, even when it's someone you raised? If you've ever had to reclaim your worth from a family that tried to erase you, share your story in the comments. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. If this story hit home, Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about family, fallout, and finding your voice. See you soon in the next one.